Have you ever faced a setback at work and found yourself torn between two choices? Keeping it secret to protect maybe your reputation, or maybe considering sharing it to increase your credibility? Well, you're not alone, my friend. Welcome to the Brave Rebellion, where we break down what it takes to have a courageous conversation that can create powerful change and transforms relationships and lives. I'm Tammy Dunnett, your host, leadership coach, communication skills trainer, and someone who knows firsthand how uncomfortable, how difficult, but necessary these conversations are. My guest today is Dr. Kristy Taylor, who was working as a career coach when she herself experienced her own setback, a layoff in her job. And she found herself at that exact crossroads, deciding, do I keep this secret and quiet to protect my credibility, or do I let people in on the struggle? Welcome to the show, Kristy.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm so excited to be here today and to share this story because I think a lot of people will be able to relate.
Oh, especially today. The world is a little upside down right now. So before we tell people what your decision was, because we want to save that and what the impact was, take us back to before this layoff happened and what was life like for Dr. Taylor at that point?
So I have actually been running my own private coaching practice for about 10 years, but I've always, for the last 20 years, when I introduce myself, I typically will say educator, coach, trainer, right? Because I actually come out of higher education. I spent 20 years working in higher education as a professor and a dean. And then I made the shift completely out of higher ed. Well, I still do part-time, but I made that shift a few years ago into organizational development where I was able to take and leverage my coaching skills and background in education and training to come on board and to support organizations. So all the way up until this point, this is what I had been doing. And I really had jumped into the organizational development realm. And if you're not familiar with organizational development, it's all those things that Tammy just said, right? Where we work with people to facilitate change through coaching, professional development opportunities, leadership development. And
Mm.
so I was really very well versed in that space as someone who has spent years supporting adult learners. I have a background in the military, so I was able to bring that all to the table to be able to support and help individuals to grow within their career as well as support and facilitate change.
And so you're going along day to day, life is good. It sounds like you're enjoying your work. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, this event or this opportunity lands in your lap and you're faced with this dilemma. So, what was the challenge that presented itself?
All right, so this is, of course, I live in a DC area, so I think I can be pretty candid, right? Living in the DC area, um, involved in the organization, I thought, okay, this is where I'm going to probably spend my career that I fully transition into this organizational development type of role of training, career coaching, professional, just helping people to grow. And last week of January, we are told that we're going to be furloughed. Now, as somebody who has a background in the military, I looked around and I said, this is not a furlough. Most likely we're going to be laid off. And so I could see people upset, crying, because this is people careers. They've spent 15, 20, 30 years. I mean, some people I know that work for the organization have been there 40 plus years, right? And so what do you do when you come to work one day with a place that you have put your blood, sweat, and tears in, and you're expecting this
Hmm.
to be your life, and it's not just furlough, but you have to go quietly, right? And people don't find out until a couple months later that hey, this was the first group that was actually laid off. So I think that day, because I kind of had already accepted like this was about to happen, right? So I had mentally prepared myself in some way,
When did you
but being
find out it was going to happen?
that morning when I walked in, but there were signs.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Just
you,
reading,
you
there were
used your
signs like, hey,
intuition. You'd seen.
this is
Okay.
about to happen,
Hmm.
right? So I kind of had mentally, I'm not saying all the way, but preparing myself that there was a possibility this was going to happen, right? But it just so happened when I walked in that morning, that Monday morning, I was like, okay, you guys are being furloughed, and I knew that hey, we were not coming back. And my first thing was, okay, I actually said, let me go ahead and pack my bags. Let me go ahead and pack the desk up because I know we're not coming back. Let me start the process of looking for another job. Let me make that transition, right? But also supporting people because remember, I'm in this space as a career coach. It's like supporting people who really had not in that moment really what was happening had not really dawned on them. It was like, okay, we're just gonna go home. We'll be back in a week. No, I remember telling my boss and my colleague, hey, go ahead and pack your bags and control your emotions and just be preparing yourself because most likely we're not gonna come back. And you need to be looking for another job and be prepared to transition.
So you're still in coach
Now,
mode while going through it yourself.
yes, very much so.
Okay.
And now I all of these people that I know and I'm connected with. So yes, trying to support them because that's what I had been placed there to do, right? But also in that, then I'm also running my business Work Solutions, where I think it took about 3 or 4 months for me just to say, okay, what can I do to step out and help? Because at this point, this is we're experiencing mass layoffs in here in the DC area. So at this point, I'm starting to do workshops and I'm having people to trickle in into my workshops and events who are sharing their stories, but I am not publicly sharing my story of what
Hmm.
happened to me, right?
Yeah. Before we
So,
get into that, I want to just slow down for a moment and really, because people who are listening, they're going to have the same thoughts, feelings, and questions you had in that moment. Like, where do I
yeah.
go from here? What the heck happened? Or take us back into the moment when you started to feel like, oh boy, this is big, and I need to decide whether I share this or not.
Well, I think that immediately what I noticed was just a lot of information coming down the pipeline, right? And just based on some of the things that I saw and the emails that were coming through or things that I was seeing take place here in DC, I kind of knew like, okay, hey, this is going to be a shift, right?
Yeah. And it sounds like you
So
just kind of went straight into work mode. Like you just kept working. You had this job that was great, but you still had your business as well, and you just focused in on the business. It wasn't like
I
a
think that
moment.
there was a moment, but I think that the moment happened the day before. So I don't go into too much detail about that moment, but the reality of it was it happened that Sunday before I came in. I just had that come to God moment with myself, like this is about to be done, right? So
Yeah.
cry your tears,
Yeah. Like
cry
the
your
realness
tears,
of it. Hmm.
right? Morning, and then you have to go in. And I didn't know how fast it was coming, right? I didn't expect the next morning when I woke up to go to work and I walked in and like, hey, did you get the email or did you go to the meeting? And then no, I didn't. No, I just got here from the train, right? And it's like, no,
Yeah.
we've been laid off. So, well, we've been furloughed.
Yeah.
But I just knew immediately. I
Gosh.
was like, okay, there was no coming back. It. I think I am because I had that come to Jesus meeting with myself the day before of like, okay, this is the reality of it, right? This is what's about to happen. I kind of was in a better place because I had cried the day before.
Yeah.
But when I also, I think too, as a coach, and you probably have experienced that as a nurturer of people, when you see people go into a panic mode, although I had not completely processed what was happening, I jumped right into that mode of helping people. But
Hmm.
there is nothing like when you're a coach, especially a career coach or this motivational coach and mindset coach. And it's one thing to talk all of these great things. Most of us are coaches because of things that we've experienced before, right?
Yeah.
And we thought, okay, I'm finally in this place. But then to suddenly, once again, find yourself having to apply all those techniques and tips that you've been telling other people, right? People are holding you to that standard. So there were definitely days, even in the weeks after,
Hmm.
I was crying.
Yeah.
They
Well,
couldn't
let's
get out
talk
of
about
bed.
that standard for a moment. What were you like? How were you talking to yourself about that standard and how it's impacted you?
Well, I'm actually so glad that all of those courses and things that I have been telling other people that I have been making an effort to live by about mindset. Because one thing that comes with this process of grieving, right? And I think that people want don't say you were fired. You weren't fired. You were laid off,
Mm.
right? So don't say you were fired. You were laid off because but to me, by saying, well, I was fired, I'm kind of looking at this as like it's my fault, right? It's not
Yeah.
your fault that you
Yeah.
just woke up one day and you got laid off. And it doesn't just happen in the space where I work. I mean, it happens in corporate companies and organizations. But if you're a person who gets up one morning and goes to work, even if you see the writing on the wall, you still don't want to live in the reality of it, right? You still want to be able to. So I'm so glad that I had equipped myself with those tools because that grieving process is up and down. So no matter with me saying, okay, I'm a coach, that does not mean that every day was easy. Because I just
Hmm.
said, like there were days I didn't even want to get out of bed, right?
Yeah.
I didn't my family knew, but nobody publicly knew. And then here I am as a coach still going out for those first few months and still doing my standard workshops, right? But not telling my story because who wants to hear from a coach who's been laid off,
Yeah.
right?
That's an important piece.
Right? But
Self-doubt.
yeah. So I mean, I had days when it was definitely up and down, but it was just about something about feeding myself and mindset, right? Because I was able to leverage my talents, and I would say within about 30 days, I was able to get another job. And in fact, I've even transitioned from that job and moved on to something else. So
Mm.
in a time and a space where are still probably looking, I've been able to leverage my knowledge and expertise as a coach and move and navigate through these spaces. But yes, it is very much a grief process. It's very much a come to Jesus process with yourself, right? To acknowledge and also to reject the fact like this is my fault. It's not. And what I've dealt with in terms of emotions of other people in this process of supporting is just all of these people who are awesome talents, um, who didn't get a call right away, right? And they're experiencing the emotions of I'm not good enough, or maybe is my resume hard? No, no, it's just the job market that we're in. And
Hmm.
so as a coach, I'm still even myself, right? Still dealing with the quick transition because it doesn't just the grief of what you thought was about to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't quickly, right? But also I'm helping so many people through that process of okay, how do I navigate to my next steps?
Yeah.
And I know we'll get there, but it really wasn't until I started to share, like, hey, this happened, just like I'm sharing it with you now, that people started to really connect with me more. It's like when I went in the room and said, like, hey, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there with you, right? Uh, and I remember I did two events for a local library. Both of those events, registration was maxed out. And the first event was like, okay, that was probably the first time I opened up and shared. So I think it took me all the way to like May to be like, this happened to me.
So about 5 months.
Yeah.
So it happened in
Yeah.
January. Let's just get that time. In January, you got laid off. Grieving process, up and down, a little bit of sometimes I feel bad, sometimes I feel strong.
Mhm.
And I think that's pretty normal for a lot of people. Um, and then we get to the point where, like 5 months in, you start to share your story. What was it that
Mhm.
had you go from I need to keep this a secret because people won't want to learn from me to I'm just going to share this anyways. So take us to that moment.
I was actually, it's a lot of books and things that I was reading during that time, right? About sharing your story as a coach. The thing about coaching is that we all become coaches because of some experience that we had. And sure, I've been a career coach for 10 years, right? And I've navigated the job market, but never to the point. This was my first time where I'm navigating it from the standpoint like, hey, I walked into work one day and I suddenly don't have that. But it's not just me. It was like a department of like 500 plus people that I was supporting. We're all out. And I was reading books on just like sharing more of your story and relating to people. But then when you walk into the room, and I still was hesitant, but walking into the room, I'm gonna tell you, I did this event for a local library with no plans to share.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because you
And
hadn't
then,
shared that before. Yeah.
and I walked into that room and I saw all of those people there who were still grieving, who were still trying to figure out how to make a transition. And instead of going with my speech, to start off my introduction, I just said, hey, I'm here with you. I get it. I've been through it. Emotionally, still going through it, right? Still trying to process it all. But you're gonna be okay. You're gonna come out on the other end of this. So yes, it was at that event in May when I opened up for the first time and said, hey, I'm with you. Because I saw all of the people in the room, people who had been in their careers 20, 30, even 30 years, like I
Mhm.
said, trying to figure out, well, what am I gonna do next?
Yeah.
Because I still work, right?
It sounds like you were really pulled forward to build that connection and reassure them. Does that sound right?
That's what, yeah, because a lot of people they started after that started coming to like now I just host a series of free events every week. Like literally, I host resume writing and career workshops every week, and then I've started booking and bringing in professional speakers to just pour into people. I don't charge a dime because the speakers don't charge me a dime, right? And what I've done is just created this support network that just pours into people because people actually need that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So it sounds like your desire to serve was just greater than your fear to withhold.
Yeah, I think people need to see your humanness, right?
Yeah.
because every coach has a story. We have that moment that makes us. And here's the thing with a career, I'm probably going to work on. I'll always have my business and I'll always work. And so that was not the first, that was might have been the first time it happened in that way, but who knows, it might not be the last time, right? But the thing about that process is like, okay, now you've gone through it. People need to see your humanness.
Yeah.
At this point, I can't, with all of the people who've flown, come through my workshops, come to my classes, I honestly cannot see myself, not see myself in them, right? I don't want to be talking to them as they're going through this tough moment, trying to navigate this job market. I don't want to be talking to them as if I have an air of superiority and never have experienced what they've experienced, because it's not as simple as I'm looking for a job. This for a lot of people was their identity in terms of this is what they did for years, right? And so now you have to find a newness or transition. And so it's not as simple as people might think when folks are trying to figure out how do I start over in the midst of a
Yeah.
job market that is
Yeah.
rough, right?
Because the big question is, who am I? I thought I was this.
Right.
I thought I was this, and I thought my life was laid out for me. And that's part of that grieving
Exactly.
process, is grieving that future you thought you had that's not going to happen now in the way that you thought.
Exactly. And I mean, I even have seen this for young people, right? Young people who might have been recent college grads and thought, okay, this is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to spend my career and my life work. So I've seen it up and down. People who, again, 40 plus years, and this was so much of their identity. And there, it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Because it's suddenly over,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And your legacy and impact, not with the people that you have relationships with, but it almost looks like your legacy and impact just knocked out just like that. And then you have some folks who are just beginning their career and they're trying to figure out where do I go next? Because I thought that this was going to be to you, to what you said. I'm grieving the life that
I,
I'm just grieving the life I left behind, and the other said is I'm grieving the life that I never that I thought I was going to have, right?
mm-hmm.
And I don't know where to go from here because I put so much into this.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now we know you made that decision and it wasn't even intentional, which is really interesting. Like you just walked into this moment and felt pulled to share the thing that you'd been holding on to for 5 months as this
yeah,
secret, and worried about your credibility around all of that. I think for the listeners who maybe are struggling with these same decisions, part of understanding the fear, and resonating with that fear state that they might be in as to what if would be helpful for them to learn about how you dialogued yourself through it or moved yourself through it.
actually, it helped when I stopped overthinking about it.
Mm,
When I was thinking about it all the time, like, no, I'm a career coach. I have to, there has to be a level of perfection that comes with this persona of coaching, right? I must always be, especially as a working career. Once I stopped thinking about it, and like I said, I didn't go in that room with the intention, but when I saw the emotions on the people's face who really just needed some support, I'm like, hey, I get you. I've been there. I'm there now in terms of my emotions. I've been there. The things I'm going to teach you help me to find a job and navigate this market quickly,
yeah.
right? But people, when you stop overthinking about it, that's when you can actually be more effective because sharing the story and just taking that step without overthinking it, and just being my natural self, that resonated with people so much, that they felt that they have a connection. They could just email Dr. Taylor and ask me anything. They could just
Yeah.
bounce stuff off of me, right? Because they felt like that's somebody who's been there, done that.
Yeah.
Versus if I would have kept walking into a room and like I was doing behind the scenes prior to that, which was, I don't know, I don't, because to the point of credibility, I don't know, right? And I was like, this the persona of perfection sometimes that we like to give, but once you kind of take that cloak off and just be your natural self and don't overthink it, people will connect with you, right? People are looking
Yeah.
for folks who connect with and who understands them, and you just never know who might connect with your story.
Yeah. One.
Sometimes I'll go in there like, hey, I'm a veteran. So like, you know what I mean? So I'll have different pieces of myself that I'll throw in there when I know who's in the room so that they know like I connect with you, right? You're
Yeah.
not alone.
Yeah, that's right. And every time you say veteran, I don't know if you noticed that I smile, but I also am a veteran in the
I,
Canadian military, right? So there's an instant
yeah,
understanding when we
yeah,
share that piece of us, with an audience and they get this part of my life. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you keep yourself pretty neutral, right?
Yeah.
Just by showing people that piece of humanness that they can connect with. So I guess my advice would just be don't overthink the process of sharing your story because
Yeah.
you can just never know who you might connect with or whose life you might impact with that.
That's right. You know what I love about your brave moment? So often we think of brave moments as being really big, loud voices, standing tall. But your brave moment was so subtle and it was so natural and it had an incredible impact.
Yeah.
So, not what we picture sometimes when we think of, my specialty is workplace relationships, workplace bullying. And often people who are targeted feel like they need to speak loud and stand up, and a real energy comes with that. That isn't always needed. And I love that you've highlighted that here, that it just was simply being human in a moment when it called for it.
Yeah, I will tell you because this conversation is just really making me think like because I always feel like I want to be the loudest voice in the room, but I don't, right? But I don't always scream it the way I want because I'm very
Yeah.
reserved on a lot of things. But when the right moment comes and you
Mhm.
feel that in your gut, like, hey, I need to say this, that's when it is. And I will say, since I came forward and I've been a lot more open about like, hey, this is what happened to me, this is my story. In June is when I started launching this. I did this again, no intent. I started launching that series of Beat the Bot workshops that I've been running on a weekly basis. And, again, I might have 3 people, I might have 25 or 30 people in that workshop. Whoever shows up, I run it because usually they need some help or support or finding themselves in that position. But I wasn't even doing that before. I would just do like a couple of lives, answering career coaching questions. But that kind of compelled me to say, hey, people need this support right now.
Wow.
And so, like from that moment of sharing, I was able to build out build out a support group that we have for people to feel like they can come into that space and ask me
Mhm.
questions, get help with your resume, get some support from somebody who's been through it, who understands what you're going through, right?
I love that.
And that would
So
never happen had I
I
not
opt
just
that's
all about
amazing because I teach people when your intention is clear, the path unfolds. And
yeah.
before what I'm summarizing now is before you shared this moment, the intention was to keep it hidden because that was the path to credibility. But after you shared it, you realized that actually ignited the path to credibility.
Yeah.
And it allowed you then to see the impact you could have. And what unfolded since sharing it and caring enough about the people in that
Hmm.
room, your intention to connect with them is creating a major ripple effect.
It is.
I got
And
goosebumps.
again,
So important. So throughout this whole journey, what surprised you the most?
what surprised me the most is once I start that what is kind of like how me overthinking was self-sabotaging. Even though I thought it was like me being positive, I actually was just overthinking. And kind of once I kind of let go and said, okay, this is me real and raw, right?
Yeah.
Like this just this whole flood of creativity came out in terms of me being able to not only connect with people but to better serve them and to create content and workshops and resources to better serve the audience that needed me at the time.
Yeah.
I feel like in some ways I was self-sabotaging and holding myself back. And just that little moment, it was like you said, it wasn't anything big. When I just literally looked around at those 25 plus people who came there and just they were like, I was, work here and I was laid off. And I just said, okay, look, I've been through that. Once I shared it, and it was like the most unexpected thing, and I just let go. What that flood of creativity that I've experienced in the last few months to be able to support people, that has really surprised me.
Yeah.
Because I
It sounds like the bravest thing you could do was to lay down the judgment, the self-judgment,
judgment.
self-criticism.
Yeah, yeah.
Bravest thing you could do. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And for our listeners, here's a point of reflection for you. Why don't you just take stock in your life right now? And where's a moment where you might benefit from laying down that self criticism and that self judgment to see what might come out of you sharing your moment? If you have loved today's conversation, subscribe and share with someone who's ready to start their own rebellion. And we will definitely put all of your links in the show notes where people can connect with you. Now, I will say that this conversation has opened up a bigger question for me, and it's about what happens when our vulnerability doesn't land or it doesn't have the impact we think when we're being intentional about it. So we're going to explore that in a future episode, so stay tuned. Thanks for joining me, Kristy.
Thank you for having me, Tammy.